So, okay, I'm going to start. Oh, didn't happen. Okay. So my name is Hannah. Thank you very much for being here. This is a Train the Trainer class series. Today we're talking about five of the mental shortcuts that I see people commonly take that are kind of hamstringing financial wellness. We will talk about what holistic financial wellness is, because I think it's important to define that. Before we get started though, I always like to do a land acknowledgement. So I want to recognize that we are all on native lands, and I am currently sitting on Kalapuya land, and I am grateful to be able to live, work, and learn on their land. I do always like to start off every class with the breaking of rules as far as Zoom etiquette goes. And those of you who have been through classes before know about this. Is that I think it's important if you want to have your audio on and your picture on, so that can be more interactive. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, or you're having breakfast, you're welcome to keep everything off. But if you have a question or comment or an observation, or a pushback even, it's important that you throw that at me the minute that you're thinking about it. So let's practice interrupting Hannah. Okay, so I'm going to talk for a little while, and I would like somebody to interrupt me, please. So my birthday is tomorrow. My 50th birthday is tomorrow, and we are having a party on Saturday, and you're all invited. It's in Brownsville. If you know where that is, welcome to the Valley. Nobody knows where fucking Brownsville is. Oh, right. I forgot to say that there is swearing in my trainings. It is not meant to offend anybody. I'm seriously just going to keep talking the whole 90 minutes until somebody interrupts me. Anyways,
Hannah,
there'll be swearing.
Hannah.
Yes, Marie.
Where's
Yes.
Brownsville? Your birthday, 50th birthday?
My 50th birthday party is Saturday in Brownsville.
Where's
It's
Brownsville,
it's kind of out in the boonies between Corvallis, Albany, and like Junction City, Eugene. I think it's Highway 99 east or west or something. It's kind of out there, but it's a neat little park. So it's got a little creek.
Happy
Cassie?
early birthday.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you very much, Maria and Cassie, for interrupting me. As you can see, nobody died when that happened, which is fantastic. So yeah, I would encourage you, if you have something to say, to interrupt. We have plenty of time. We have time enough to make it through the slides and do question and answer. So please feel free. So let me grab slides and we'll get going. Oh, actually, let's do introductions before I do that. Okay. I think most of you know each other, but I would like to do introductions. If you wouldn't mind, I'll pick the first person. What I'd like you to offer us is your name, what you do, and what is the silliest thing that you could do right after this class? The most nonsense, ridiculous thing that you could do. So I'm going to pick Della. Della, and then Della will pick the next person. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, Della. Hi.
Hi, I'm Della. I am a career coach with ERCO. I work with low-income and homeless people and help them get into work. And then, sorry, what was the last question?
Absolutely the silliest and most ridiculous thing you could do right after this class.
No, I could streak down the alley.
You could streak down the alley. That sounds like a fantastically silly and ridiculous thing to do. Perfect. Who goes next, Ella?
How about Cassie?
Cassie, did you feel that one coming?
I did not, but I was prepared. I am Cassie. I'm also with ERCO. I'm a Sunsite manager for an elementary school in Portland. The most ridiculous thing that I could do after this is probably have a good therapeutic cry.
Fantastic. That sounds somehow silly and not silly all at the same time.
Yeah. And I pick Hank to go next.
Okay. Uh, There I am. Hank Lobel. I work for Columbia County Community Justice. I do pretrial assessments and supervision of people who get released on pretrial supervision. Silliest thing is, I'm thinking something with my boss who sits next to me, next office over. Go and tell her I'm taking the rest of the afternoon off to go play pool. I don't know. Go drink and play pool. How about
There you
that?
go. Sounds silly.
Okay, who hasn't gone? How about Robin? She hasn't gone,
There you
right?
go. Robin hasn't gone yet. There
I
you
don't know
are.
if you can see me. It's kind
We
of
can see you. Yep.
dark in here. So I'm Robin, and I work for ERCO. And I'm a family resource navigator at an elementary school, and I help connect families with resources in the community. Something silly. Let's see. I know something silly. I could clean my house. That would be silly.
That doesn't sound super silly.
No,
Could you
sorry.
do
We
it in
just
a
came
sim-
back from a camping trip, so I have like camping gear all over my living room.
That doesn't sound silly, but could you do it in a silly way?
Oh yeah, I could like turn on music and dance the whole time.
Okay, that sounds approaching silly. We'll come back. We'll come back to the silly.
Okay.
Okay, Robin, who goes next?
How about Yelena?
Okay, there you go.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Yelena and pronouns she, her, hers. And I am also work at IRCO, and I am race, equity, social justice, middle school mentoring, positive culture identity program coordinator. So I work with free communities, African, Pacific Islanders, and Slavic communities. And the silly thing I can do after this class, probably pet my dog. I don't think it's silly, but a little bit pet my dog and play a little bit with my dog. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's not quite silly. We could silly that up though. So there's only one person left. This might be the silliest person on the call. Maria?
Is it Maria?
It is Maria.
Okay. Okay, I pass to Maria then.
It is, sorry, I had to take a nurse's call. Anyway,
Oh,
so
sorry.
for me, I'm Maria. I am a housing coordinator with Latino Network. I work very closely with Della and lots of the people from ERCO. I am currently in Las Vegas, and I can tell you that the absolutely most ridiculous, silly thing that I could do right now would be, or after this class is over, would be, considering it will be 102 degrees out, go for a run. That
Yeah.
would be the silliest thing I could do.
That's pretty ridiculous. I was thinking immediately you said Vegas, my brain, something on Fremont Street, because that's pretty silly. It's pretty silly
No,
down there.
going for a run would be really silly.
Really silly. So I'm going somewhere with the silliness. That's like, I have a purpose to that. So just kind of hang in there with me. All right, let's actually do slides. I lost my slides. One moment, please. There we go. We missed Fremont Street when we were in Vegas. Chloe says yeah, Fremont Street's quite the experience. I watched a family try to walk through Fremont Street, and they had a 4-year-old, and that 4-year-old was asking so many questions, and that poor little family just booked it. He turned around and went back the way they came because they couldn't. It's not a good time for that little family. But yeah,
Well,
lots of great questions. Lots of.
Chloe, if you ever get a chance, well, I was just going to tell Chloe, if she ever
Oh.
gets a chance to get back to Vegas, you should definitely check out Fremont Street. It's the old part of the strip. It's the original part of the strip.
It's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you've been very open with your kids if you take them to Vegas. Cassie, I absolutely don't think that family understood what Fremont Street while they were just puttering around in the evening, one evening in Vegas. So they did not. They weren't going to Fremont Street to go to Fremont. They just wandered there, and it was quite an adventure to just watch their reaction. It was just real cool. Okay. Yeah, good experience though. Character building for everybody. So as we talked about, we were talking about some mental shortcuts, and there we're going to talk about 5, but there are of course many, many, many more. And these are the 5 that I see cropping up in my work with clients, all of my clients, all over the spectrum, income spectrum. It doesn't seem to matter. Everybody's doing these. Okay, so core values of Pacific Stoa, which is my company, is that we teach others to trust themselves. We respect others' inherent resilience, and we foster autonomy and self-reliance. So let's dig into each of these a little bit because it's important. These core values are echoed throughout the class itself. So what does it mean to teach others to trust themselves? We have inconsistencies coming at us from both inside us and from the external world that reinforce the message that we cannot trust ourselves. We recognize that there are very few tools that intentionally teach people how to trust themselves, and we work to develop and teach adaptive trauma-informed strategies that teach self-trust. We respect others' inherent resilience. So there's no difference between being able to trust yourself and being resilient. It's the same thing. Well, welcome, Jack. We recognize that everyone we serve has everything that they already need to get from where they want to go from where they are to where they want to go. And our purpose is to simply teach, coach, and accept people as they are, where they are right now, and then get the hell out of their way. And then what does it mean to foster autonomy and self-reliance? Once those we serve are practiced in resilience and are able to be aware of their behaviors without judgment, they are by definition self-reliant. We recognize that for a time, those we serve are borrowing our confidence in them, and we are honored to reflect and model acceptance, positive regard, and respect. So objectives of today is to deeply understand why those you serve are using these 5 common mental shortcuts, biases, heuristics, and other assorted shortcuts, how to teach awareness of those shortcuts specifically, and you're going to hear me echo this a lot, awareness without judgment, and learn at least one tool, strategy, or concept that you can teach to counteract a shortcut. You're probably not going to connect with everything that we're going to talk about, but my guess is that, you know, with the population that you're serving, you'll find one of these kind of pulls to the front and is really resonates with you. And if we have time, we'll talk about the upcoming group classes. We'll have time for Q&A. And then if you have specific scenarios that you want to throw to me in the group, then we'll do that too. So what the heck is holistic financial wellness? Financial wellness means that we respect that every part of your life touches your finances and your finances touch every part of your life. It's not that difficult to see that every single choice we make, either directly or indirectly, touches our finances. Unfortunately, financial literacy, which I'll bag on here more a little bit, only talks about the mechanics of money, not about the decision-making and choice part of things. Financial literacy is not enough. We must grow resilience and trust in ourselves and awareness of our decisions without shame. Holistic financial wellness must be trauma-informed, collaborative, and client-centered, and financial literacy is not. So I work on a spectrum here. So everything in my curriculum kind of fits along this spectrum of holistic financial wellness. On the left-hand side, we've got the money mechanics. This is financial literacy. This is the difference between a stock and a bond. And investing, talking about inflation, which is coming up a lot right now, talking about credit scores and credit reports, right? This is important stuff. It's absolutely vital to financial wellness. Like, I can teach you the difference between a stock and a bond in about 15 seconds. Everybody I've ever taught that to understands it because it's not rocket science, but it also has never changed anybody's life. I'm also under no illusion that everything on the financial literacy end of the curriculum is absolutely Googleable. We have the world's knowledge at our fingertips now. So every single piece of this can be found for free on the internet. And like I said, none of that has ever changed anybody's life. You kind of expect it to, but it doesn't. On the other end of the spectrum, we've got soft skills. This is problem solving, decision making, reducing procrastination, talking about our relationship with money, changing habits and routines, all of those things. Soft skills is how we actually get from where we are to where we want to be. So the combination of these two things, the mechanics and the soft skills, is what makes holistic financial wellness actually work. So today we're going to be right over here. We're going to be definitely in the soft skills side. So we're not going to be talking about money at all. But occasionally, more than occasionally, I'd say, especially with professionals, I'm asked, where does budgeting lie on this? So we are not going to talk about budgeting today, but I think it's important to kind of point this out. Budgeting is complex. So it's over here with mechanics, but it's also way the hell over on the right with soft skills. Budgeting exists everywhere along this spectrum. And, you know, that's why teaching someone to build a budget is not for sissies, because you have to sort of incorporate this entire holistic financial wellness spectrum. All right, so we're actually getting to the class, I promise. We're getting there. Hang in there with me. So the first thing you need to know about fallacies, biases, mental shortcuts, and other heuristics are they are not a choice. They are not a personality defect. So these are shortcuts that our brains are taking. They are not necessarily a choice. Our brains are fantastically busy and are always looking for ways to take shortcuts so that they can conserve energy. And that's kind of why we are naturally predisposed to these kind of shortcuts. Expecting someone you serve to magically turn off a cognitive bias without teaching them is unrealistic and absolutely would have worked by now, right? If everybody was just able to magically turn these off, they wouldn't be there. So let's start with a thought experiment. Hold on, I need water. Okay, so you own a gas station in your town. It runs great. It's highly profitable. Things are going well. So you think I might open up a gas station in the next town over. I might franchise myself. So because you're a good, smart business owner, you're going to pay a market research firm $50,000 to do the market research oh dear, hold on, there, to investigate whether or not it's a good idea for you to open up a gas station in the next town over. You pay them their $50,000, and they come back and they say, nope, sorry, it's not a good idea to open it probably within the next 15, 20 years. So would you go ahead and open that gas station just long enough to cover that $50,000 for the market research? Sit here all day.
Are you asking us?
I'm asking you, would you do that?
Wait, you asked the question. I just want to make sure that I understand the question. To cover the $50,000?
Yep. Would you just open the gas station to cover the $50,000 that you paid for that market research and then close the gas station?
No.
Why not?
Well, because that doesn't make any sense. That's throwing good money after bad. That's going directly against the advice that they just gave you. What was the point of giving them the $50,000?
Right. That's why this is just a thought experiment. Okay, so that's number one. Here's number two. You spend $8 on a smoothie. Ostensibly, everything inside that smoothie is something that you love, and there's no reason that it shouldn't be absolutely delicious, but it's disgusting. Like it's the worst smoothie you've ever had. You take one sip of it, and it's not poisonous. It's not going to make you sick. It's just awful. Would you continue to drink that smoothie?
I wouldn't.
Me either.
Because I paid for it? No. No.
I'm just going to power through it. Blah, blah.
I would return it to the store and ask for the different drink.
Yep. Okay. Let's go to our third thought experiment. There's a new restaurant in your town. It's very trendy, it's very chic, and it's very unique. So you pay one time to get into the door. It's $300 a head. And you walk in, they seat you, everything is beautiful, the ambiance is perfect. and they're going to serve you very politely a meal over the course of several hours. They're going to, and everything, they start you off with appetizers and drink, and everything is sumptuous and delicious and perfect and so decadent and rich. And as you're eating, you're getting fuller and fuller and fuller. Oh, I forgot to mention, one of the rules of this restaurant is that you can't take any food with you. And you pay that one time and everything is covered, including the gratuity. So you can't take anything home with you. And you've already paid the price for this meal. So as the meal goes on and on, you're consuming everything because it's so wonderful and delicious. And it's time for dessert now. And they bring out this beautiful, delicious, moist, gorgeous chocolate cake, this big mile-high piece of chocolate cake. And you know that if you eat one bite of that chocolate cake, you're going to reverse on everything that you've just eaten, if you know what I mean. I was trying to say that in the politest of possible ways. Do you eat that chocolate cake?
No.
Why is that?
Not if you know you're gonna reverse.
Reverse.
No, like that does no.
Yeah, that's one
Alright.
of my least favorite things in the world. So definitely not.
Yeah,
Definitely
agreed.
not. Yes. Okay. So these all three of these thought experiments have something very much in common, don't they? That's something called a sunk cost. So a sunk cost is not a cognitive bias, a heuristic, a shortcut, or anything. Sunk cost is just a thing. It's neither good nor bad. It's just something that exists in our world. It's an economics concept. A sunk cost is an unrecoverable cost. It's sunk, it's gone, right? Most often, especially because this is used in economics in the business world, this is referred to as a monetary cost. But I think it should also include our time expenditures and our energy or effort expenditures. Sometimes we expend energy, effort, and time and money that we are not going to get back again. And it is not, again, a bad thing. It is, in some cases, like the gas station, it is the cost of doing business, right? We would not expect to see that money come back again. It had a job, it did it. I'm not going to recover those costs again. So that's the definition of a sunk cost. But then there's something that's closely related, and that's the sunk cost fallacy. As we go, I'm going to be giving you these little bubbles. And the bubbles are like the indicators. This is how I hear somebody using the sunk cost fallacy. So this may be similar to what you hear with the folks that you serve. I've already invested so much into this. So that could be a job, it could also be a relationship, right? Like I've already invested so much of this. I paid for it, so I'm keeping it. Also, I paid for it, so I'm eating it. I paid for it, so I'm using it, that kind of a thing. I'm going to get my money's worth, right? So these are all really good indicators of someone using the sunk cost fallacy. What is the sunk cost fallacy? I hear you asking. Maybe you're aware to asking that. So the sunk cost fallacy is a continuation or a behavior of an or an action only because of the previously quote unquote invested time, energy, or money. It is an attempt, our brains are attempting to mitigate loss or risk. It's like we're trying to take advantage of as much resource as we possibly can. And that's not a bad thing, but that's sort of what's powering the sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy conflates the value of something with its cost, and the value and cost are two separate things. It is the single-minded continuation of a plan of action without considering any other potential risks or variables other than the price that was paid for that. So I want to pause here, and I want to make sure if we need clarification on this, that you ask now. Not that you can't ever ask again. It's just important to kind of pause just to make sure this is clear. Okay, let's carry on. So in order to counteract the sunk cost fallacy, we're going to actually use one part of this definition. So we are going to actually turn this, we're going to use this part of the definition that we're conflating the value of something with the cost, the price that was paid for it. We're going to use that to cancel out. We're going to use it to undermine sunk cost fallacy. And you're going to get really, really sick of hearing me say this today, but the first thing to do with any of these fallacies, shortcuts, whatever, is to teach them, to define terms for the person that you're working with. Teaching someone that this is not, Hannah didn't come up with sunk cost fallacy. That's been around for a very long time. When you teach someone that there's a name for something that they've got going on in their head, they're suddenly not alone. They're not the only one in the world that doing this. They're not crazy. They're not stupid. There's a name and there's buttloads of research on the back end like that. You are just teaching them. So teach it. Sometimes we don't have to do anything else to undermine one of these shortcuts besides just teaching it, just the awareness that it's there and it has a name. After you teach it, my encouragement would be to teach a better way to assess the value of a choice. And that could be a financial choice or literally any choice. So here's how to do that. My slides are out of order. Okay, just give me a second. There we go. Who did that? So this is me. I don't know if you can tell that. I am not smiling in this picture. I am grimacing. So prior to the pandemic, by the way, I teach with stories, so I apologize in advance if you don't like storytelling, because I'm going to tell a bunch of stories. Prior to the pandemic, I played bass drum in a bagpipe band. I've played drums off and on since I was a child. I've carried a lot, so I've been in a lot of marching bands. Carrying a drum at 17 is very different than 45. It's just very different. So as you can see, I'm wearing a hat on my head that does nothing to protect me from the sun and only makes me hotter. I'm fully kilted up. I have a vest. I have a long sleeve shirt on. I have those big white hose, those socks, and I'm carrying a drum that at this point, because this is at the end of the march, is about the weight of a neutron star. This drum is so big that I could scrunch up and fit inside of it. Like, I'm a little round person, but I could scrunch up and fit inside this drum. This drum is so big, I can't see over the top of it. So this parade was, let's say, 50 minutes, 45, 50 minutes. And then after this bus ride, I have to march this drum back to my car. So by the time I back to my car in like 100-degree weather, I'm pretty well blown. Like, I'm exhausted. I've got sweat running down my back. I'm a hot, sweaty mess. For some reason, they didn't have any water available to us at the parade. And for some other weird reason, I didn't put any water in my car that morning. And I determined in my stressed out, dehydrated state that I'm not going to make it the 20-minute drive home without some water. If I try to do that, I'm going to die. That's what I've got. Like, so I need water. So I pull into everybody knows what a Dairy Mart is. Pull into a Dairy Mart. I walk over to the refrigerated section. I pull out a bottle of carbonated water, which I love. I'm actually drinking bubbly water right now. And I head to the checkout lane. So we're going to first run the choice of this bottle of water through the wants versus needs, which is the typical traditional way that we make decisions. Is this bottle of water a want or a need? What do you guys think?
Could you please repeat, Hannah? Could you please repeat the question?
Is this bottle of water that I've got in my hand, this Hannah, the one on screen, is that bottle of water a want or a need?
A need.
Okay, and then it says need. Anybody else think it's a need? Anybody think it's a want?
It's a need, I think need.
Hank says need.
I would say need to. I mean, I don't necessarily think you would need sparkling water, but water for sure.
Okay. So every time I tell this story and I ask this question, about a third of the time people say it's a want, about a third of the time people say it's a need, and about a third of the time people say, wow, I don't know, this is complicated. And so far, we are talking about a bottle of water. Like, this is not a big life decision, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because that wants versus needs thing, yes, I need water to live, therefore I need this bottle of water. I worked really hard, so I need this bottle of water. But the wants versus needs thing, that strategy is absolutely not working. If it was going to work, it would have worked by now. We don't have simple enough lives that our entire world can be chunked up into two columns, want and need, good, bad, black, white. I'm sure you would have grown up for about 15 whole minutes before you realize the world doesn't actually work like that. It is way too easy to rationalize a need, especially if we're in a hot state, which I literally was in a hot state. Like if we are stressed out, under pressure, in crisis, traumatized, we have choices removed from us, which is something we talked about last month. We will more likely rationalize a choice as a need. Wants versus needs is way too fast. Our brains can process that in a nanosecond. I've got 2 check boxes, want, need, I check one, I'm done. That was a good decision making, Hannah. It is absolutely inconsistent. So we can look back in time, we can look at all those choices that we thought we were making the right way. I thought that was a want, but it was actually a need. I thought it was a need, it was actually a want. And that gives us a bunch of inconsistent feedback to try to make good decisions in the future. Go ahead, Elena. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Sorry about
I just wanted to make sure I'm watching for the unmutes to see if anybody needs anything. We are using the wants versus needs tool to make quote unquote logical decisions, even though that's not really a thing human brains do. But it is actually a super, super, super emotional decision-making tool because the words want and need are vastly, deeply emotional. It doesn't get much more emotional than want or need. So why are we using emotional language to make supposedly logical decisions? It is a setup for failure. Right? It gives us lots of input that we failed and we've sucked at using this decision-making process many, many, many times before. That's something we talk about in depth during the crisis cycle training. And again, yeah, what we need during a crisis, apathy, hot state, any of those stress states may not serve us long-term. So we need a different strategy for making decisions. So first, let's talk about the value of this bottled water. And the value of a choice cannot be its price. So the value of a choice is its service to me. So what are some ways this bottle of water is of service to me?
It helped regulate what you were feeling, maybe both mentally and physically after a long day or a long event.
Yep, you saw my face, right? I don't look super happy there, but yeah. What else?
I think it's first of all the need of hydration of your organism, not to have any health effects.
Yeah. Oh yes, I'm highlighting here that the value of something cannot be its price. So here's some values that I came up with. Let's see how I did. So it's yummy, right? To someone who doesn't like carbonated water, that's not a value, right? And here we are including an emotional state. It's delicious and delightful and tasty and pleasurable to me. So I am including emotion into my decision making, but I am not making a choice from an emotional place. It is hydration. As you said, it is refreshing, which is kind of, stop that. It is different than refreshing. Like hydration is just any water, right? Refreshing is it's cold and I'm hot, so that'll help. Any other values that you can think of? I like what I think it was Della said about like change my attitude a little bit, right? Make me feel a little bit better. So again, I'm reinforcing this, intentionally repeating myself. The value of any choice is its service to me. It is not the price I paid for it. Let's talk about the price because we have to consider that. So sunk cost fallacy links the cost that I paid, the price that I paid with its value. In this strategy, we are flipping that. We're taking the cost that I paid for that and we're moving it over to the risks column or potential risks. So the risk of this bottle of water, or risks, should include but not be limited to the price itself. So let's say the price is $3. Sounds pretty straightforward, but I'm going to make this very complex right now. So let's talk about opportunity costs. So this is another economics or behavioral economics term. This is not a mental shortcut. This is the fastest and dirtiest technically correct definition of an opportunity cost, but no actual human who's not an economist understands this. So we're going to use this as our definition. So the definition of an opportunity cost is what I gave up for this choice. So if I spend $3 on this bottle of water, I can't also spend that same $3 on gas or cat food or literally anything else, right? So once I've spent the same $3, I can spend another $3 on gas, but not this $3. That's an opportunity cost. But opportunity cost does not just apply to our money. It also applies to the energy and time that we took. So not just to like buy and drink the bottle of water, but I somehow made that $3, right? I spent a little bit of time and energy to earn that $3. If I had found $3 laying on the ground, it takes me a tiny little bit of time and energy to bend over and pick it up, right? So we've still expended energy and time that I'm not going to get back again. So this bottle of water now has like 12 million, that's a little hyperbole, has so many opportunity costs associated with it. The opportunity cost of the money itself, the time and energy it took me to make that money, the time and energy it's going to take me to walk in the store and buy it, the time and energy that it takes me to drink it, the time and energy that it takes me to dispose of the bottle. So like there's an expanding sort of opportunity cost for this one silly bottle of water. Oh, right. We can always make more money. We can always make more energy. We could never make more time. So that is something that I think that we don't value enough when we're making decisions. Okay, back to risks. So besides the opportunity costs associated with this bottle of water, all of them, time, energy, and money, what are some other possible risks that you can think of? Could give me an ice cream headache. That's a risk. Yes. Could be flat, could taste bad, could be gross. I have anxiety, so my brain tells me all the time that stuff is going to kill me. So it could be full of poison. Or like the little ring, when you take the lid off, that little ring could cut me in the leg. Any other things, possible risks you can think of with this bottle of water? So we've evaluated the values of this bottle of water. We've evaluated the risks. So now it's time to do the third step. And this is the fun part. Is there any other way to get some or all of the values without some or all of the risks? And there may not be any other ways, but it's important that we are looking for them. Looking for other ways to do things is kind of a superpower. Like we get stuck. We will talk about that in here in a little bit, but there may not be other ways, but it is always important to put our heads on a swivel. So what are some other ways that I could get some or all of the values of this bottle of water without some or all of the risks? And I'm not saying a better way, I'm saying another way. I could steal this bottle of water, right? That eliminates one risk, is the cost of it. It adds on other risks, but there's some other ways.
You could recycle the bottle and try to mitigate some of the damage you do to the planet.
I know, so selfish of me. How dare I? Bass drum Hannah was not hearing that. Bass drum Hannah didn't give a damn. What are some other ways?
You could buy it somewhere else, or it's cheaper, so you're mitigating the cost.
Yeah, absolutely. I've taught this about 4 million times. One of my favorite responses is a lady that said I should walk around the neighborhood until I find someone with their sprinkler on or drink from their hose bin. I was like, that's pretty good. That sounds like a lot of work, but so, okay, come back with me to the Dairy Mart. I'm standing there. I've done my values. I've done my risks. I'm now looking for other ways. So this has taken me maybe 7 seconds, right? I've been thinking about this for 7 whole seconds. And I put my head on a swivel and I'm looking around for other ways. And guess what I see over in the corner?
Drinking fountain.
I saw a drinking fountain. One of those cool old ones from like high school that had the big refrigeration units underneath. So now I could take any of these other options that I just came up with, and I could run them back through the same system. Like, let's say I think I'm going to steal it. What are the values of stealing the bottle of water? What are the risks associated with stealing the bottle of water? Right? And what are the other ways? So you could spend a bunch of time, you know, going through these over and over again, but I didn't. I saw the drinking fountain. I decided at this point I'm paying $3 for bubbles. I put the water back. I went over to the drinking fountain, I drank a whole bunch of water, gave myself a lovely ice cream headache, and I made it home without dying. So, okay, so before I move on to the next shortcut, what are your thoughts or observations about sunk cost fallacy and how to counteract it? So one of the definitions, part of the definition of a sunk cost fallacy was this one at the bottom, the single-minded continuation of a plan of action without considering any other potential risks. And that links right up with our next shortcut. And that's called plan continuation bias. Here's how you might hear this showing up. I started it, so I'm going to finish it no matter what. I'm no quitter. Oh, good old American stick-to-itiveness stubbornness. I'm no quitter. I just have to keep pushing through. Let's talk more about plan continuation bias. Story time. No, never mind. I was teasing. Definition first and then story time. So there's that definition again, single-minded continuation of a plan of action without considering any other potential risks. Is an attempt at doing things the quote-unquote right way. It is our attempt to have a structure, strategy, or plan. It is more pronounced as we reach the end of a plan, right? As we get closer to the whatever kind of finish line we're looking at, plan continuation bias gets worse. It can be perceived as doubling down, and the cognitive bias that goes along with the doubling down inside of plan continuation bias is fascinating, and we do not have enough time to talk about that today. What this results in is inflexibility, tunnel vision, and hyperfocus, which is a kind of avoidance. So I don't know if you've ever seen, I'm only focused on this right now. They're going to keep drilling down on that no matter what has changed around them. And what happens if they keep with that and get to some sort of completion, they have checked that box. I have completed this. I did this the right way. But because they were inflexible in their plan, there's probably lots and lots and lots and lots of opportunities for failure. What do I mean by that? Inflexibility, tunnel vision, hyperfocus, and avoidance is how we're going to pick this apart. So how do we counteract this single-minded focus? You're going to get really sick of hearing me say that. Teach it. You know, show them part of this video, or like just teach it. It's pretty simple to teach these. And the other one is we're going to practice scenario training. So we're going to fight back, not fight back. We're going to try to undermine that inflexibility. All right, so you're an airline pilot. You're a co-pilot here. So as you set off on your trip today, you set out a flight plan. I'm going from here to here, and this is my plan. So there's our plan that we're setting out, right? So somewhere along the way during your trip, the weather turns to bullshit. Like your instrumentation maybe is not behaving properly, or something or someone on board is injured or broken. But you set out this plan, goddammit, so you're going to keep with it. You're going to keep going on your plan regardless of weather and regardless of instruments and regardless of things breaking or being sick. What do you think is the natural result of this, or a potential risk of this plan continuation bias?
Blame may fall.
Yep, you see, I just have to keep pushing through, and that's how we fly airplanes into the sides of mountains, right? So what could they have done instead? So we're going to talk about two different sort of modes of scenario training, and these are a single question that you could deploy anytime as part of almost any conversation. The first one is prevention mode. What could you do to prevent that from happening? I'm sorry, what could prevent that from happening? So I'm laying out a plan, and your question to me is, okay, that's a great plan, Hannah. What could prevent that from actually happening? We're like, oh, well, the weather could turn to bullshit, right? So what are you going to do if the weather turns to bullshit? Then you set out like a contingency. And then like, what if it's maybe my instrumentation isn't behaving so well? Okay, here's another contingency. What if somebody gets sick on board? What if some part of my plane breaks? Like, then we can look at another contingency. So this is all in prevention mode. So you can very quickly come up with 2 or 3 little contingency plans. And even if it took 90 seconds to accomplish that, that still helps to sort of weaken plan continuation bias, because you or whoever you're working with has already thought through that process in a way that is safe. Like if we're doing this in prevention mode, there are no risks here. Like we are just thinking about it. And from what I understand from pilots, they absolutely do this as well. So and then same scenario, kind of, but now we're in recovery mode. So now the bad thing has happened. Like maybe we didn't crash an airplane, but maybe we did. Your question will be, what went wrong? And sometimes the response that you'll get back is, I fucked up. And that is an easy answer. It is not a helpful answer. So we are not evaluating someone's performance. We're going to be evaluating the systems and routines that this person used. And that could just be their decision-making process, but I fucked up. Seems like it should be productive. It's very much not. Okay, so the weather turned to bullshit and I kept going. Or my instrumentations failed and I didn't have any backups, right? Or someone got sick on board and we didn't have a protocol for what to do when that happened. So we're evaluating the systems and strategies, not the person. So here's more on how to counteract plan continuation bias, teach it, practice scenario trainings. So worst case scenario game for prevention. That's what could keep that from happening. Like what could derail your plan, and then do a post-mortem if the bad thing has already happened, and you're needing to turn the bad thing that happened into its own sort of prevention. Like what can you use this for next time? And again, you're going to get real sick of hearing this too. We are evaluating the system, strategy, or plan, not whether they did it right or not. That is a shameless plug for next month's class, where we're going to be talking about building, iterating, and evolving adaptive strategies and plans. And then we're going to be talking about self-acceptance, experimentation, intentionality, and perspective. So there you go. Okay, so let's say you're working with someone and you've taught them plan continuation bias and you've taught them like that scenario training. Here's some possible reflections that you can use to reinforce the learning that you've planted in their little heads. What do you think you'll notice as you begin observing for plan continuation bias? So all we're doing here is asking them to observe for it. We're not asking them to correct anything. What kind of patterns do you think you'll notice? Just by asking that question, we're sort of seeding it with people, or kind of like letting them know that patterns are out there. Do you think it will be hard to do the scenarios? All good, open-ended reflections and prompts. Next story. All right, so you're driving along and traffic slows and then traffic stops, and then pretty soon It's just a parking lot. It's just a whole bunch of nonsense with this parking, this traffic. And you're sitting there, at first if everything breaks up right now, you're going to be fine. You're going to be on time. And then now you're definitely going to be at least 15 minutes late. And now you're absolutely going to be an hour late. And you're getting frustrated and angry, and everybody around you is getting frustrated and angry. There seems to be no relief in sight. The traffic goes on and on for miles in all directions. And pretty soon you start to think about maybe honking a little bit, maybe just hitting that horn. And it looks pretty tempting. And maybe you do it. Maybe everybody does it. And everybody pretty soon is honking for no fucking reason. And is it doing any good? Absolutely not. That is not the point. But you honked, right? Maybe you yelled. Maybe you said some interesting swear words. Right? So this is an example of something called action bias. Actually, before we do action bias, let's take a break. It's later than I thought. So let's take a 3-minute break and come right back. And we'll move through the last 3. Sound good? 3 minutes. Okay, so 3 minutes. Everybody back? Okay. Let's do action with action bias. So here's some indicators of action bias. They've got to do something. They don't have any other choice. I can't just sit here and take this. Action bias is basically just favoring action over inaction. There is always the option to just opt out and do nothing. Action bias is trying to serve a purpose. Like most of these shortcuts, action bias is attempting to motivate or propel us. It can actually be useful, just like all of these shortcuts can actually serve a purpose, but they can also go too far. Action bias can be a response to feeling out of control, having our reduced choices, which again is something we talked about last time when we talked about consent and control. Action bias is highly reactive. So it's always putting us behind the 8 ball because we're always reacting to, not being proactive of. Action bias results in impulsivity, hot states, crisis, panic, etc., etc., etc. And it all by itself, it reinforces that we have no other choices. So it is kind of dangerous and poisonous just all by itself. So to counteract action bias, we're going to use these 2 things. Can be a response to feeling out of control and a reduction of choices, and reinforce that we have no other choices. We're going to be talking about choice, which is where we're going to be talking about. Oh, by the way, the first thing you want to do is teach somebody that there is such a thing as action bias. And then we're going to practice an option inventory. And we already have done this, right? When we were talking about the drinking fountain, one of the things that I said was put your head on a swivel, like look for those other options. So this is a practice. So my encouragement is if you're going to teach somebody how to do an option inventory, to keep it from being a to-do list, it needs to be a practice and not a productivity tool. And I'm going to repeat that because it's super, super important. This needs to be a practice, which means it needs to be done in a safe way, like with no risks. This is not a productivity tool. We are aiming to train the brain to seek options, which is something our brains do not do when they're in crisis. They automatically shut down. If we're already feeling like we're out of control, we need to teach our brains how to look for other options. And that's sometimes not super easy, especially if you're working with somebody who's in crisis or trauma. It's critical that this practice not be perceived as a to-do list. That is absolutely not what we're after. And so the stakes must be kept incredibly low. So this is why we talked about it. Get weird, just get real silly with it. So remember when I opened it, when I asked for you guys to introduce yourselves and I picked Della, sorry, Della. What was Della's reaction when I said, what is the silliest thing you could do after this class? What did she do? She paused for a long time, right? She kind of, that's what we're after. It's beautiful. That little moment right there. It's so perfect. Like they say all these things and you say, yeah, what's the silliest thing you could do? Or what's the silliest thing you could have done? And they will do exactly what Della did, is they'll stop and pause and usually be like, what the fuck are you talking about, right? It's okay to be transparent about your intention with asking this silly question. Like, I'm just trying to like disrupt this action bias that I just taught you about, right? That long pause while someone is considering their options, because they're not having to consider a to-do list or what they should be doing, because your silliness, weirdness cracks into that crisis and anxiety just a little bit, gives us just a little bit more space. We are not looking for better ideas, just other ones, just different ones. We're not optimizing, we're not after productivity. And again, be transparent, tell them what you're after, why you're asking this goofball question. And be prepared for a long silence. When you hear a long silence like that, stop talking, just don't talk. You're making space between the impetus or impulse to do something and the doing of that thing. Just like this, like that was pretty tempting, just do it. There's a small space between the impulse or impetus to make a choice and the actual doing of that thing, whatever that is. Things like action bias closes that gap. So there's no space between the impulse and the doing of that thing. So does a lot of other things. Action bias does it. So does crisis, restriction, lack of choice, lack of autonomy, those kinds of things. So what we are trying to do by teaching brains to seek other options is we are making space between those 2 points. Because once that's gone, we never get that back again. So this little space between the impulse and the doing of the thing is so incredibly critical and rare and so very fast. Our brains are incredibly fast at this. Silliness, looking for options, interrupts crisis and slows down decision making. If you try to use an option inventory to optimize or to go for productivity, it will close this gap. It will slam it shut again. And we're wanting to open this, which is another shameless plug for next month's class. So possible reflections for action bias. You've taught them what action bias is. Maybe you've talked about the silliness inventory. What do you think you'll notice as you look for silly options? It's a great way to prompt them. Do you think it will get easier or harder to find silly options? What do you need clarification on? I'm sure you started to like these reflections, these prompts that I'm including could almost be used for literally anything. Number 4 is magical thinking. We are going to touch the very tippy tops of magical thinking because it is deeply wound in addiction, but also mental health, OCD, all sorts of things go in with magical thinking, and there's a bunch of different varieties of it. So we are only going to tap it a little tiny bit. We're not going to, this is not going to be complete, full and comprehensive understanding of magical thinking. So here's what you might hear if someone is using magical thinking. It's just this one time. I shouldn't have even thought that, or I shouldn't have done that. I don't like to think or talk about that. As you may imagine, I hear all three of these things, especially early in my work with people, right? I don't even like to talk about money, or one partner says about the other partner, she doesn't even like to talk about it. Also, when people are spending and they're saying things to themselves like, it's just this one time, right? It's just this one coffee. It's just this one down payment for a house, that kind of thing. Those are all examples of magical thinking. Magical thinking is finding the causation and correlation where there is none, right? Just because you don't think about something doesn't mean it's not going to happen, especially bad stuff. And I am solidly Gen X, so I had it modeled for me that you don't talk about bad stuff. Just shove it down. Just keep shoving it down, right? If you don't talk about the bad stuff, it's not going to happen, right? No. Magical thinking is a weird kind of optimism, right? It is optimism on steroids. It's almost addictive optimism. It is absolutely a result of our threat-obsessed brains constantly seeking any relief, however small. So it will take our brains in crisis, or even just our walking around brains, will seek out relief, even if it's incredibly small, even if it's the smallest little glimmer of hope or optimism, it will take advantage of it. It will just latch right onto it. Like action bias, it is incredibly reactive. So it gets our brains in that sort of reactive scarcity mode. It results in impulsivity, hot states, crisis, and panic. Yes, it does, because it reinforces again that we have no other choices. That's the last two from the other one. Never mind. We are going to be using these two. It results in threat-obsessed brains constantly seeking relief. Are you tired of this yet? Having me say teach it? So to counteract magical thinking, you're going to practice something called pattern recognition, and do that with awareness without judgment. So here's these pattern recognition, these magical thinking indicators, and your response is, your purpose here is to begin to help them notice the actual pattern. What happened before that? What happened after that? So let's say, oh, is that a consistent pattern? We are teaching skepticism here because it's very difficult to battle back against magical thinking. It's fairly deeply seated, and it's trying to serve a purpose. By encouraging people, giving people the tools to ask these kind of skeptical questions, you are teaching their brains to question the magical thinking in a gentle way, without saying that's stupid, nobody should be thinking that, right? Like, that's not where we want to be. Possible reflections for magical thinking. What kind of patterns around magical thinking do you think you'll notice? Right? So again, this is a fantastic example because we're evaluating the thinking process, not the person, even if the person is the one doing the thinking, right? Do you think it will be difficult to notice magical thinking? And what resonated to you the most as we've been talking? All right, this is our last one. You're almost there. And this is called effective forecasting. Here's some indicators of effective forecasting. Someday when I just have to, I don't like to think or talk about that. There's commonality with magical thinking. Effective forecasting is the overestimation of future emotional states. So we are almost always exclusively our happiness, okayness, are a positive emotional state. So it is essentially as picking, okay, back up. Our brains are really good about thinking about the past and really good about thinking about right now and really terrible about thinking about the future, right? That is its own kind of shortcut. So our brains take this little, they kind of phone it in, kind of half-assed thinking about the future, and says, okay, all I need to do is buy the house and get the car and have this baby, and we need to get married, and then I'm going to be happy, okay, safe, right? So we go through a couple of those. We buy the car and we get married and we blah, 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 and we do this and that, and we're not happy. So therefore that means something must be wrong with me. So effective forecasting is overestimating what is going to make us happy or okay or safe. When the things that it takes to make us happy or okay or safe may be part of those big milestones, but sometimes they're not. So this is big milestones, but it's also like coffee, like, oh, I just need to have some coffee, right? Oh, I just need to make it through this week, or any number of things. I just gotta get myself going. I just gotta finish this project. So it could be little things, it could be big things. Effective forecasting absolutely is obligation and restriction to keep us motivated. I just have to, that push. And there, like I said, it does hide a lie. If I do X, then I'll be happy, safe, or okay. If I could just make it through this week, if I could just have this coffee. And it is a constant setup for failure. I had my coffee, I made it through the week, and I'm still miserable. What the fuck is wrong with me? Or we got married, had the baby, we bought the house, and I'm not happy. I'm not happy. What's wrong with me? So we're to counteract effective forecasting, we're gonna actually use this lie right here. If I do X, then I'll be happy, safe, or okay. First, teach effective forecasting before you do anything else. So we're actually going to make the lie bigger. We're going to make it really big, like nonsense big. We're going to get weird with this, as you probably were about to guess. I just need to finish this project, and then the rest of my life will be perfect. Because we don't finish the sentence. What we say to ourselves is, I just need to finish this project. Push. What we don't do is finish the thought when our brains are actually telling us, I just need to finish this project and then I'm going to be okay. Or I just need to have this bottle of water and then I'm not going to die, right? But if we make the second part of that really ridiculous, it tends to sort of point out the lie without us having to do any fighting. If you are a Harry Potter fan, this is the ridiculous chart. So that would be like, I just need to get this raise, and then maybe our brains say, and then we're finally going to be okay. And my encouragement would be to take the first part of that, I just need to get this raise, and then all wars stop. There's no more war in the world. So to make it really ridiculously big to point out that lie, and all by itself, that tends to reduce that effective forecasting push. So here's some reflections I've used when talking about after teaching effective forecasting. What do you think you'll notice as you finish the effective forecasting thought with silliness? And what kind of patterns do you think you'll notice? Do you think will resonate with you about this practice? Also, anytime that you introduce silliness, people get a break. You can actually see it. They'll like take a breath. They're like, like you've given them permission to take a break from all the seriousness in their lives. All right, sales pitch for the group classes coming up. We've got group classes starting in October. This is a 12-week series. Part of my intention with building this class series was to have something somewhere for you, your organization, to plug people right into. It encompasses that entire spectrum that we talked about. It will include the mechanics and the soft skills, and it's all trauma informed, as you can imagine. Everything in my curriculum is. Those are our last resources. These are references, rather. I'm going to begin putting into chat a couple things. So first, we are coming up, we've got about 15 minutes left, so we're going to have time for chit chat or whatever the heck you want to talk about. Let me grab my. First, as always, I ask participants to complete an exit slip. It should take about 90 seconds. The exit slips are handy for me. It's a favor to me. It helps me develop and grow these classes. So that's the exit slip. If you want a certificate of completion for this class, you may take the quiz. That is the second one. If you would like, and I would strongly encourage everybody to attend the info session for that 12-week class. Anybody who attends that let's start over. Anybody who attends that that will receive a 30% discount. I'm trying to do two things with my brain at the same time. Never mind. I will include that third link here in a minute. Anybody who attends an info session for the classes themselves gets a 30% discount. So like if you attend that class info session and you pay the and your organization is going to pay the registration for somebody to attend, that 30% discount still applies. And that is, info sessions are only going to the 23rd. I'm finding the info session right now. Okay, so while I'm doing that, as we've been talking today about these shortcuts that our brains are taking, which one, if any of them, was the one that stuck out to you the most? Nothing. Go ahead, Della.
You're talking about like the 5 sections you just went over?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely magical thinking. It's actually something I never really know what to do with. It's something I probably do myself, but it particularly comes up. I don't know if this is quite the same, but like when I have really religious and specifically American clients, none of my refugee or immigrant clients ever really say things like this, but like American clients who are religious, who maybe sometimes aren't following through with things or not, you know, just like not participating in a way that's going to kind of help move their goals along. And, you know, sometimes I'll hear like, it's fine. Like, I know I missed this, but, you know, like, God has a plan and I just have to trust that it's going to work out, that kind of thing. I'm not a religious person, so I actually genuinely don't understand and I never know what to say. So I end up just trying to sort of like okay, well, here's the new goal that you really should meet. You know, and I just avoid the subject of like, what they just said, because I really don't know what to say. I don't know if that's technically magical thinking, like the
It's
religious.
absolutely magical thinking. And I intentionally avoided bringing the religious component into it just because I don't want to offend. I'm not a religious person either. It's delicate around magical thinking. It is something that, whether it's in a religious context or otherwise, magical thinking is deeply wound into our heads. And we all do it to some extent. I mean, but that is a perfect example of magical thinking. And it is difficult to unwind that. About the only thing that I would recommend, besides getting some really good training on it, like, because it's intense how deep magical thinking goes, and the different flavors of magical thinking, is to encourage pattern recognition. You might not use that kind of, you might not say, let's do some pattern recognition. You might say like, oh, okay, so has this happened before?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
To get them looking for patterns. Like, is this a consistent pattern?
Yeah, that's good, because then you don't really, I don't ever want to bring up I don't ask people about their religion. I don't like talk about it. I don't do any of that because like I just work with so many people with so many different beliefs. I never want to make someone feel bad about, or I don't want to make people feel like I feel any particular way about their religion. So like just sort of, I guess, asking them about the pattern makes more sense. So you just avoid that subject completely.
Yeah. Delicate is how I'm gonna like advocate for that. It is not, it's a big one. It's like probably one of the bigger ones, but we just touched it and moved on. So Hank?
Yeah, you know, I also magical thinking, and the last one, affecting forecast. I always and now you make me question some things, because I always professed, the positive thinking, being positive, and that kind of my daughter's high school graduation many years ago, the speaker said something along the lines, always do the right thing, make the right choices, and then she said, and above all, always be positive, because that creates a magical thing that makes things happen, and I've written that on cards for my kids over the years, so I think that I believe in the power of the mind, but I guess it kind of dangerously overlaps, those last two things, right? I mean,
You got me. Actually, I debated whether to put toxic positivity on this training. Toxic positivity is a real thing, and it's related here. It's closely related to magical thinking, and it is absolutely dangerous. And anybody else who's been part of the classes before, like, there's a lot of positive visualization stuff that happens, but we're instead leveraging something called negative visualization. When we talked about the scenario training, that's all negative visualization, which doesn't mean it's negativity, and it's not pessimism. It's actually a decision-making strategy that sort of gets truncated, gets lopped off if we're over-reliant on positivity. Positivity can just sort of like be avoidance, and it can like be it can negate what's actually going on. Certainly positivity has its purpose, especially if we're talking about goal setting and big picture thinking. Positivity is fantastic. Positive visualization is something I use, but it needs to be balanced out. So it doesn't become magical thinking. It doesn't become toxic positivity. So I'm sorry if I disrupted something for you there, Hank, but it's kind of the job. I poke, I disrupt. Yeah, that's a fantastic observation. What else? Any other, Hank or anybody else, any other observations? Thank you for sharing that with us, by the way.
No, just go on more is I
Yes.
actually have a law enforcement background, and I was in tactical units, and we did a lot of the visualization, and it's a lot of mental preparation, and also we're taught about sometimes that the will in critical situations, but again, I think it's one of those things that but I can appreciate not taking that a different route, just being able to stay true to those things that are meant to be, but if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. Anybody else saying anything, any situations with those that you work with that have popped up in your head as we've been talking?
I think the one that I relate to probably the most, and the one that I see with clients and families most often, is effective forecasting, like that banking on like, okay, as soon as my kids are back in school, then I can go back to work full time. As soon as our food stamps come through, then I can do this. As soon as this, and that like unwillingness to look at the underlying issues because something else is always going to fix it. And then once that something else comes through, they realize like the problem's not fixed. So then it's again next, like, okay, well, once this happens.
That just breeds more crisis, right? It's that constant putting out of fires, and using and reusing obligation and restriction. I just have to. And someday which is all of the things, it's planned continuation bias, it's magical thinking, it's an effective forecasting. All of those things are like, they start to like clomb onto themselves. Yeah, it's effective forecasting is a big deal, but it isn't. None of these are like stuck permanently. They're just real stuck in there real good. But yeah, effective forecasting is big with people who are in crisis or feel like they have limited choices. They're trying to keep themselves going. And it might sort of work, but it's also really poisonous. Anybody else notice any effective forecasting with those that they serve? Maria?
I don't know. I'm thinking about myself. I'm thinking about clients,
That's always my secret sub purpose is it's not really about your clients. I'm always teaching.
No, on it. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, because I'm like,
It's for you.
It's about, I think it's about us. I mean,
It is.
I have choices that I have to make, and I just keep thinking, well, I just need for this one thing to happen, sadly. And then I'm like, you gotta stop, because hold on a second. Of course, my phone picks the worst time to ring. Sorry.
Absolutely. Nobody talks to me till I'm in session.
Exactly. Yeah, like, you get up to go to the bathroom. You've been sitting there for an hour and a half and your phone doesn't ring, and you get up to go to the bathroom and leave your phone where you were, and then all of a sudden your phone is ringing. It's so annoying.
Absolutely.
Anyway, yeah, like for me right now, I know that I have I'm under a lot of pressure to make some choices in my life right now. And I just keep going, well, I need to wait. And so I've been thinking about this a lot, I mean, I don't have a problem being candid about it, but my mom's in hospice right now, and I'm in Vegas, and I'm supposed to be moving to Portland, and I got my management company now breathing down my neck about re-signing a lease. And I'm like, or they're going to like hit me with this penalty. And I have all these things going on, and I'm just like, this is a really tough situation to be in, and go, well, when this happens, all of the other pieces will fall into place for me. And so I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so how do I just let all of this go and just be in the moment and go, honestly, I feel like I don't have a decision to make right now, because there's not a lot in my hands, And then I think, and then when I'm looking for apartments in Portland, I'm like, I just want a fireplace. Della knows this because we've talked about it. I just want a fireplace. I'll be happy if I can just have a fireplace, but I can't have a fireplace because it's not in my budget, And so I'm like, okay, so am I just not going to be happy until I can have an apartment with a fireplace, or a house with a fireplace? It's like, I feel like if we get caught up in some of those things, and it's super easy to do.
Oh, so easy. Yeah.
Then we're just basically never happy, because these goals may just be, it may seem like it's something that's really simple, but it just may really not be realistic. I don't know. I got a lot going on in here right now.
Maria, can we use you as an exemplar right now?
Absolutely.
Can we practice on you?
Yeah, please.
So let's practice on, let's pick Maria apart. So let's practice on Maria. So what, in that little story, that took what, a minute for Maria to tell us all of that? Thank you. What are you guys hearing in what's going on with Maria? Jack?
Some effective forecasting.
Definitely some effective forecasting there. Yeah. What indicated the effective forecasting for you, Jack?
The fireplace.
I know, right?
I just need a
no
fireplace.
Worries, I get it.
Chloe says Della, our apartment complex in Beaverton has fireplaces, and there is a wood price comparatively.
What did she say? Our
Good.
apartment complex in Beaverton has fireplaces and are reasonably priced comparatively. Totally
Yeah.
off topic, but we really enjoyed that. Wait,
not totally on topic, not totally off
no,
topic.
but it's
Good.
okay, because it's a good thing to know.
So anybody else hearing any other indicators? I kind of think I heard all of them.
Yeah, that's what I feel like. Like I can't even figure. I'm like all of them right now.
All of them. Go ahead, Chloe.
and then I also think about my clients, because like I'm dealing with a client right now who I told from the very beginning that her expectations were unrealistic, that she was going to get herself into a bind. Oh, I mean, a year later, it's totally come full circle. And now we're possibly going to have to cut her off because everything that she insisted, that toxic positivity, everything that she insisted she could make happen, you know, none of it has come to fruition. And, you know, and so she's been running around trying to get help from other agencies in anticipation of our grant year ending. And so now she doesn't realize, you know, that she's gotten herself in a situation where now she's like basically double dipping from 2 different agencies. And we may have no choice, you know, to maintain the integrity of our program. We may have no choice but to cut her off, you know. So it's like, how do you deal with clients who don't want to listen when you're trying to tell them kind of what Della is saying, you know, and it may not necessarily be in a religious sense, because for this person, like, she never brought religion into it. But the point was, she just kept saying, I know I can do this. I know I can make this happen. This is going to happen. When you know, nothing that you can say to her is going to make her see that this isn't, you know, we can't bank on what you think you can make happen in the future. You can't put your present in what you think that can happen in the future, because you're going to jeopardize your situation. And that's exactly what's happened now.
Yeah, I want to hear what Chloe had to say, and then I have a reflection on that. Go ahead, Chloe.
I was just echoing what you were saying, like seeing all of those coming through, but then also hearing like now after this, recognizing like I need to pause and like my action bias is kicking in, but like I need to stop and not. Yeah, I was just echoing you.
So Maria, I want to reflect something back, like talking with someone who's overusing, it sounds like a lot of magical thinking, a lot of that like super positivity. What's the manifesting shit, right? Like a lot of that. I would love to brainwash you so that when you hear that, you don't hear that as a personality defect or someone in denial. I would love for you to begin to use that as an indicator that someone is in crisis.
No, I know that, no, I get that. You know, it is magical thinking. It is, in my opinion, a manifestation of somebody being in crisis, which is, I totally recognize that. And for me, and this is something like being in the nonprofit sector, it's my first year doing this. Listen, excuse the expression, I'm a grown ass adult, you know, like I raised a kid. As a single parent, like I know, you know, I've been in her situation, not quite, but I've been in this person's situation.
Right.
So, you know, I get it. And I recognize that this person is totally in crisis. But what I'm trying to figure out working in the nonprofit sector is like, when you get assigned a job, let's say housing coordinator, because that's what I do, right? And so I'm being entrusted with these funds, you know, to be a good steward of these funds and to spend them in a way that is, you know, in keeping with whatever, you know, the guidelines of the program. And yet I'm looking at this person who's totally in crisis in so many different areas of their life. And the funds that I'm working with and the grant that I'm working with and the resources that I'm working with just don't have the answers for that person. And I guess that's where I'm like I think I'm in a crisis right now in what I'm doing, in that I am seeing, like, my goal for years was to work for nonprofits, right? And so now I'm here, and now I'm looking and going, wow, you know, like there's so much more that these people who are in these situations and who are seeking this assistance, there's so much more that they need than what I am able to provide to them.
That resource gap. Has anybody else felt that as well? You don't have to call out yourself or your organization, but you could just secretly raise your hand if you feel. Jack says, gives thumbs up. That resource gap, and the Chloe, Della, thank you. That is a very real thing. Thank you, Robin. And I don't know if you guys can hear it, but the crisis and the panic and the immediacy that Maria is feeling is, a kind of empathy, right? And it's beautiful, but it's also incredibly painful. Maybe, so next month, October, we're talking about how to help people build systems around themselves. Maybe in November, we'll redo the class on 2 different kinds of empathy. Because there's affective empathy, which is the same affective as effective forecasting, which is what Maria is using right now, which does, as people who serve others, when we utilize affective empathy, which is what, when we say empathy, we are talking about affective empathy. It's the emotional empathy. That feels like work. Like it feels like we're doing our jobs by being concerned that way. It does absolutely contribute to our own sense of crisis, to our own sense of lockdown, where we can't see the options that is our actual job to look for. So maybe in November, maybe I'll bring back the class on affective versus cognitive empathy. And it's not my invention, so you can go Google cognitive empathy right now. With my cautions that the people who are writing about cognitive empathy are not in your world and use language that sounds incredibly cold. But there's a way to do cognitive empathy so that we are still present with the people that we serve. We are still vastly empathetic. We know what they feel instead of feeling what they feel. But we're using cognitive empathy, we're able to do our jobs at the same time without this becoming a source of burnout, right? Which is exactly where this goes, right? So this is something I've talked with coaches about, like that's like the separation between affective empathy and cognitive empathy is protection for you. It is absolutely in service of the people that we help, that we serve. But using cognitive empathy more than affective empathy is protection for you, because we are also a resource, right? We are also a limited resource. So maybe we'll bring that back. I don't want to spend another hour and a half talking about pulling up the slides on cognitive empathy, but because I could do that. I won't do that to you. But maybe we'll talk about that. I would encourage you to read on cognitive empathy. Again, with my understanding, that's like you're gonna be like, God, that's really cold hard. I'm like, it's just not. They're writing in a clinical way, not in a way that sounds adaptable to us, to our world. So, but I feel you, Maria. I know that, and everybody, and we've talked about this at the end of other sessions before. I was like, God bless nonprofits. I'm going to stop recording just because I just remembered